Lights on. There we go. It's better. Good afternoon, guys. Thought I'd make a little video about a hobby of mine. Let's talk a little bit about photography, specific things that you can do to help your photography starting out and help you to better be able to compose shots and think a little bit more about the pictures that you're taking rather than just snapping away. The first thing I want to say is small capacity SD cards. Everyone thinks you need like a terabyte SD card. That is so not true. And in fact, the opposite can sometimes help. If you think back to when people were using film cameras more, they had only 20-30 shots on that roll of film. That's all they had. Obviously they could then change the film, but you were limited by the number of shots you could take. If you go back into that mindset by limiting the capacity of your SD cards, you can really think more and compose your shots a little bit more. Think more about the storytelling that you're trying to get across in the image that you're taking, rather than just, as I said before, just snapping away, cranking out thousands and thousands of pictures in hopes that you get a good one. That is a good way of shooting, and it actually really helps in things like sports photography and wildlife photography and that kind of thing. But if you have the time to take a moment and really think about the shot that you're taking, you probably will find that you end up with a better picture, and going forward you'll have more of an insight into that kind of environment again and the pictures that you can take from that situation. The next point I want to get across is that you don't need a good camera to take good pictures, and it's not the camera that takes the picture, it's you that takes the picture. The camera's just a tool. It doesn't have to be a 1DX Mark III, a brand new camera, to take an amazing picture. I've got an old 350D 8 megapixel camera from, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. It takes pictures perfectly well still, and 8 megapixels is more than enough for an Instagram upload or something like that. You don't need a 64 megapixel or 108 megapixel sensor in order to take a good picture. You just need a camera. And you can use your phone camera. Obviously people use their phone cameras all the time. There are professional photographers out there that only use their phones and still get those pictures put into magazines and things like that. You don't need a professional camera in order to take amazing pictures. Another point I want to say is that you can look for inspiration in other photographers' work. And obviously not saying to copy their work or anything like that, but you can absolutely use them as inspiration. And it can really help if you're in a rut or you've got photography block and you really can't think of anything else to take a picture of, or you've got an idea for a picture but you don't know how to make it that little bit different. Just go through their feed and see if they've got any similar pictures, anything like that you might be able to emulate, see how they develop their style, how you can also then develop your style, and it can really help you to get out of that rut. Don't limit yourself to good light. There is no such thing as good light when it comes to photography. There's only preferred light for certain situations. You might hear the terms of golden hour and blue hour as the only times in the day where you can really get good pictures. That is not true. Golden hour might be great for a portrait shoot in the middle of a wheat field as the sun's going down and getting that nice backlight. Great. But for example, midday sun, which most people would consider unusable because of how harsh it is, you could do some fantastic black and white high contrast street photography in that kind of light. So there's no bad light. The last thing I want to say is that the exposure meter in the camera is a fantastic tool for learning how to use your camera settings. And eventually being able to use those settings without looking at the camera is a fantastic skill to learn. So inside the camera, inside the viewfinder or on the live view screen, there is a meter across the bottom. And the ideal, according to the camera sensors, is in the middle. You can see that in the viewfinder at all times until you take a picture. That's really good. If you can figure out with your right hand where all your ISO settings are, your aperture settings and things like that, if you can figure out where all those are and kind of get muscle memory on those settings, while you're up using the camera, using the viewfinder, you can be dialing in those settings almost subconsciously with your right hand, using the viewfinder exposure meter to check the correct exposure and then start snapping away. It's a really useful tip. So get to grips with your camera's exposure meter. And that's it. It's just a few tips. Hopefully this has been helpful for some people, and I will see you in the next one.